Perfect. Looks like we're going to get started. So thank you for coming to my session. Hope you've had a great event so far. Today we're going to be covering some of the critical steps to ransomware in the cloud. My name is Sam Woodcock. Let's try and get this working. There we go. So I'm Senior Director of Cloud Strategy at iland. We're an 1111 systems company. I've been with iland for over 10 years. So previously I was a solution architect. I would actually work with organizations to technically design the solution. So I have a lot of experience actually working in the data protection solutions that we're going to be talking about today and understanding what people are trying to achieve and working with technology to make that happen. So again, thank you so much for attending the session. In terms of the agenda, we're going to be talking about what does the current threat landscape look like in terms of ransomware and the security threats that we see organizations facing on a daily basis. We're going to be looking at what's critical for both protection and recovery, and we're going to be really primarily focused on recovery in this session. And then we're also going to be looking at the iland and Zerto solution to some of these challenges that we're going to be talking about today. So that's really the agenda, and towards the end, hopefully we can get some questions in. If not, we have a booth upstairs, so come and visit us, ask me any questions. We'd love to have a conversation as well. So without further ado, get started and really talk about what we see in terms of the landscape today. I think as we're going to go through some of the slides here, we see obviously security threats on a constant basis to organizations. And to obviously help alleviate those concerns and those challenges, we see a lot of security technologies in the market today, over 3,500 different security technologies that organizations like yours can pick from to help alleviate some of those challenges and obviously combat the threats that we see. But even though there's this wide range of different technologies and vendors out there that can preach to actually solve those challenges and resolve those problems, what we tend to see is that organizations have to pick from that 3,500 security vendors and technologies and actually use multiple solutions to solve challenges. And with that comes a lot of complexity. Organizations really find, when we see some of the statistics, that managing all of these different technologies can be very challenging for their organization. And the end result is, even though we have this wide range of security technologies in place, we have good solutions, with these challenges come the reality that year over year, these data breaches continue to happen. We see growth in the number of data breaches that happen, even though we have these solutions in the mix. So what do we do about that? Alongside that, we see that the cost of ransomware is increasing. In these statistics that Zerto published, the $265 billion estimated cost of ransomware by 2031. So it's a big problem. And also the average length of disruption for organizations is 21 days. Obviously that has a wide impact on organizations from a revenue and reputation perspective. And it also has no geographical boundaries. We see ransomware hitting organizations globally. In fact, here 17 countries were impacted by a single attack. This is again from the Zerto research. So again, it doesn't discriminate based on industry, where you are as an organization. It really is impacting a lot of different organizations across the globe as well. And really, this is a marketing slide, but it really is a reality of when it's going to happen, not if something is going to happen to organizations. So it's important to, again, have strategies in place to protect and recover your business should one of these incidents happen. If we look at some of the news, these are a variety of different dates, but I think if you log into a traditional news site, each day you'll see some incident impacting some organization. In this case, we see an increase in the number of attacks against educational organizations and the impact it has on students trying to learn in the education sector. Again, in this case, the University of Northampton were hit by a cyber attack. But also on the flip side, it's not just obviously education, it's different organizations. In this case, a ferry organization impacted by ransomware. And the impact again is widespread, whether it's the data itself, whether it's the reputation, whether it's the revenue of the organization, but it has a wide scale impact on organizations. So if we look at that threat landscape again, the horror stories, what are organizations doing to actually recover from ransomware if it hits their business? So again, some really interesting research from Zerto's perspective is a lot of organizations are paying the ransom. In fact, over 56% of organizations have admitted here to paying to recover their data. And actually, the reality is it doesn't stop there. They then pay more to get the data back at the end of the day. So some folks are turning to actually paying and obtaining their data back as well, which obviously is a big deal. I think the more and more folks that pay the ransom, it encourages the behavior, and we see this continue to spiral out of control in terms of the number of data breaches. The reality also is that the folks that paid the ransom, this is ESG research, it doesn't guarantee the recovery of the data. They paid the money, they expected to get 100% of their data back, but in fact, you can see that they weren't able to obtain all of their data. Some of it was lost. So it really doesn't guarantee actually recovering and getting that data back. So This is concerning. So this is just one strategy that organizations are using to recover their data in a ransomware incident. Another element that we're seeing a rise of is cyber insurance, organizations turning to mitigate risk with cyber insurance. But the reality also is that cyber insurance premiums are growing in value. They're becoming harder to obtain. You need a lot of documentation process to actually obtain the premium. And then obviously when you want to recover the cost associated with that incident, it can be very hard to get that payout from the insurance organization. So this is a big challenge. I think it's one component part of a strategy for recovery and protection of your organization. So this is something, again, we're seeing across the industry. So if we look at what the actual landscape looks like, the reality is that you have applications and data probably regardless lots of different locations. They're no longer just in your data center. They're across different clouds. They're using software as a service. You have data across all of these different locations. If we look at what that looks like, again, traditionally, maybe you are hosting your data in a VMware-based data center. Maybe you're using a cloud provider now, such as AWS, Azure, iland, for example. And then you're also tending to leverage a lot of SaaS solutions like Microsoft 365, Mitel from a telephony perspective, ITSM software, Salesforce. You have your data across all of these different locations. And the reason we're talking about this in terms of ransomware and recovery and protection is it's important, regardless of where your data sits, to have a multi-layered security and data protection strategy. It doesn't stop by adopting cloud services or adopting SaaS services. The need to protect, recover your data is the same regardless of where the data sits. And so that's why we're talking today about how we can put strategies in place to actually allow you to protect and recover your data. Alongside this, alongside technology, you need expertise, you need clear process, you need a strong security culture in your organization. Again, regardless of where the data sits, this is really critical. So if we look at maybe a common framework, we're a global organization. If we just look at NIST, for example, they advise organizations with these challenges to actually adopt a multi-layered framework across their organization from protection to recovery. So if we look at what that looks like around identifying threats, protecting against those threats, detecting them as they happen in real time, how you respond as an organization, and then ultimately how you recover your business should something like this happen. So this is one of many frameworks, but we would really encourage organizations to be looking at how they're protecting and recovering their organization. iland as an organization is part of 1111 Systems. We have a range of different solutions to align to those frameworks. We understand that organizations need to protect and recover their data. So we have a range of solutions from security all the way through to what we're talking about today, which is backup and replication as a solution as well. So we'd really encourage organizations to look at what they're doing around security, how they're managing that security, how they're managing the alerts that come from a daily basis. I think the average is over 10,000 alerts that organizations get on a daily basis. How are they cutting through the noise and actually identifying the real risks that are going to impact their organization? But ultimately, what is in place for backup and replication? We mentioned that data is now everywhere. It's in software as a service. It's in the cloud. What are the roles and responsibilities within those cloud services? And what have you got in place to recover your data as well? So we're going to be focusing on data protection today. I think we've had a lot of stats that are bad news, but the good news from a lot of research is that if you have something in place that is trusted, and that's the key word, that you've tested it, you've validated it, you understand how it's going to work, and you've proven it out with your customers and your users, you can survive ransomware incidents. You can recover your data locally, you can recover it in the cloud, and you can keep your applications running. It's important to validate and test this and make sure that it's in place successfully for your organization. So that's what we're talking about today in terms of data protection itself. If we look at what we're offering from our perspective, we understand that landscape of data being in all sorts of different places, across SaaS, across cloud, across on-premises. It's important to have a wide range of technologies and solutions in place to enable you to recover the data regardless of where that happens, where that incident happens. So from an iland perspective, we have built our own software platform, our own infrastructure platform globally, and we have a range of solutions to address whether your data is in those different locations. Maybe you want to do backup to a cloud location from your on-premises location in the UK. Maybe you want to do disaster recovery for workloads that sat within North America, for example. Or you're using maybe object storage to address different backup solutions that you have in your organization. The other piece to this is the 365 angle as well. If you're moving your data to 365, the threats don't change based on where your data sits. It's important to have a backup and recovery strategy for that environment. That's not covered by native by Microsoft. So it's important when you're evaluating cloud services to look at the terms and conditions, the roles and responsibilities, and identify where you need to put solutions in place. But the end result from the iland side is that we have a singular console, a singular platform that can address that data regardless of where it sits, and it can all be managed through one place, which is the iland console. We're going to be talking through how we leverage technology to help with backup and replication as well. So if we just focus down on disaster recovery, it's not just ransomware where threats lie, right? It can be accidental deletion where data is lost. It can be the fact that power failure or infrastructure failure happens. Network communications are down. There are a variety of reasons past ransomware why you may need to recover your organization in a different place. And that's where disaster recovery technologies like Zerto, for example, come in to help you move the data to somewhere else and enable you to recover the data should something happen. Where disaster recovery as a service comes in is where cloud service providers like iland are leveraging and providing the platform to you and potentially the expertise, and you can leverage that on demand. So you don't necessarily have to own your own secondary data center anymore. You don't have to pay for that and all the capacity that's sat there potentially unused. You can leverage a cloud service provider such as us to actually take that portion on board and provide that to you as a business. So in terms of the benefits, if we look at the technology first, it's helping you to reduce risk. Technology like Zerto, which is a data moving technology, can move data in real time to a secondary facility. It can do that very fast. It can potentially lose just 5 seconds of data should something happen. So that's enabling you to recover quickly, reducing risk, and get your organization back up and running. It enables you to selectively protect your organization. Maybe you just want to start with your mission-critical tier 1 services. With, again, the technology in place, you can choose what you're protecting, which applications, which virtual machines, which workloads, whether you're protecting the entire location or just your mission-critical servers. And so that, again, helps you reduce risk. With the technology as well from Zerto and iland, it's enabling you to recover quickly. The technology itself enables you to recover applications in minutes. I think the SLA is around 1 minute per virtual system to recover the applications into the cloud. And this is something that can be validated. And I think back to that statistic about 96% of organizations that have something that's trusted in place enables you to recover. With the technology, it's enabling you to do non-intrusive testing at any time. So you can do it during business hours, you can do it with customers and users, and they can log into the applications and see whether they perform correctly. Is the data in the right place? And validate that in the event of a disaster, you know the exact procedures to get to those systems. So that non-intrusive testing helps build confidence and, again, reduce risk when you have to leverage this solution. Again, we mentioned saving money. Traditional approach of disaster recovery is to use a software like Zerto or another in the market and move the data to a secondary facility and bring that online. That works very well, but you're paying for a secondary facility, all of the kit that goes within that, all of the software, all of the maintenance, and that can be very costly. If you've got $1 million or £1 million of infrastructure on one side, you have to have the same on the other side to have a successful recovery. With DR as a service, again, you're not having to manage a secondary facility and all that goes with that. You're paying for just what you need from a storage perspective on a monthly basis. So that can really dramatically reduce cost. And then in terms of actually the failover itself, you just pay for what you leverage in the cloud when you need to, which hopefully is maybe once a year or once every few years. Maybe you have a need to recover. You can just pay for what you consume at that point in time, which again can significantly reduce cost. And then the other benefit to disaster recovery as a service is leveraging the expertise that a cloud provider such as us can provide to your business. Maybe you just want to focus on production and revenue generating activities and leave the data protection aspect and the recovery aspect to somebody like us. Well, that's allowing you to do that and focusing those elements, and we can take care of that from our side as well. There's a lot of value in disaster recovery as a service, and that's why we're seeing a lot of organizations using a combination of both backup and replication to successfully recover their organization and protecting it from these ransomware threats that we're talking about today. All of this is managed from a single platform, a single console, which is the iland Secure Cloud Console. So if we look at some of the benefits just in a bit more detail, the first one, again, that I mentioned briefly is the Zerto data moving technology, which is kind of best in industry, enables you to move data as it's written locally. So as a piece of data is written to a local workload in your environment or wherever it may be, Zerto sits in that layer and actually moves the data in real time to the iland data center. It can do that as aggressively as every 5 seconds. So our average recovery point objective for organizations, we're protecting over 30,000 virtual systems globally, is around 8 seconds. So if they actually have a ransomware incident, they need to recover data, maybe they want to go back, you could do that and lose only 5 or 8 seconds of data, which is obviously really good from a business perspective. That may be transactional data, there may be business data in there, and you don't want to lose that data. You have a view into that through the iland interface to show exactly what is being achieved at all times. You can tune it and obviously make sure it's meeting the SLAs of your business as well. So this helps you recover. And it also makes sure that we have application consistency and data integrity as well. It's validating that as it's passing the data, so that when you actually have to leverage it, the data is in a good place as well. The other piece that we really like about this technology and why we've integrated it into the platform is as it's moving that data every 5 seconds, it's also storing this in a journal of data in the iland location. And what this means is it's giving you granular recovery and point-in-time recovery when you need it. Maybe you don't want to fail over to 5 seconds ago because that's when you were infected by ransomware and it's still in place. You want to find the right point in time to recover your organization, your applications, and maybe that's an hour ago, for example. So this journal stores those recovery points for up to 30 days. And so you can pick and choose when you're recovering your business. And you can do this on an application basis. Maybe the disaster just hits one application. You can bring that back to the right point in time and successfully get back up and running. What the non-intrusive testing gives you as well is the capability, should something happen, to validate this prior to committing to the failover. So you want to make sure that it's the right point in time to recover to. And so Zerto, the technology that we've integrated, enables you to do that in the platform. So we really feel this gives flexible recovery and enables you to get your organization back up and running. What we, again, provide is obviously the capability to start with what's important to your business. So again, I mentioned tier 1 applications. We can start there and then build out protection as it makes sense. So it's about having that conversation with the business about risk, how you can mitigate that risk and what's important, what the value of the data is and the applications and the service, and selectively choosing what you choose to protect with the organization. When you log into the interface, you have a real-time view into the status of protection across the entire location, including things like SLAs, recovery points, recovery times for the applications. You can also do things like set a test reminder in the platform. So if you have a need for a specific application to test it every 2 months, for example, you set a reminder and you get that through the console. You can perform the testing at any point in time as well. So this is really critical. We work with a tool that we developed in-house, which we call Catalyst. Catalyst is a tool that we can deploy into your environment. You can run in a couple of minutes, and it can provide an assessment on compatibility, connectivity, the actual footprint of those applications, and we can provide, obviously, the commercial and the technical validation of the project. So we really start there, and we want to understand what we want to protect and make sure that we can do that successfully. What's really critical as well is not just the movement of data, but it's the actual orchestration of recovery. We don't know when this is going to happen. Is it going to happen in the middle of the night? Is it going to happen out of hours? Is it going to happen when a key engineer is on holiday, for example? So what Zerto and iland platform allows you to do is build these runbooks that enable the failover of your applications, and it does that in a consistent way. So you can choose when a virtual machine fails over, which one's going to go next, which one's going to go next after that, to make sure that it happens in a validated, consistent way so that your application comes up successfully. It automatically places things into the relevant networks. We can make sure that the firewalls and other end user access mechanisms are predefined so that you can actually gain successful access to the systems. And this is really critical. And it can do it across individual virtual workloads, applications, or the entire site. If we then tested and validated that through the non-intrusive testing, that means that if somebody is unavailable that maybe traditionally would fail over the applications, maybe that can be delegated to somebody else within the organization, maybe the support team. If you have a tried and tested plan, it's built into software. This means anyone can trigger this with the relevant permissions. And that enables successful recovery into the environment. I think what's really critical is the end user access element, being able to successfully get the data back and accessible to the customers and users. So with the technology, it enables you to do that. The other piece of this is I've mentioned, obviously, testing a lot of times. I think testing is really critical for, obviously, building confidence, understanding whether you need to tune the solution in any way to make sure it's successful. And again, so that you can pass on those responsibilities. It's also important for compliance purposes. Maybe your go-to-market strategy, you need to provide documentation to your customers that you have a data protection recovery strategy in place. We have things like inbuilt reports that give you that capability to provide that confidence to those users and customers. It's also important for things like when we talked about cyber insurance and getting access to cyber insurance premiums, having documentation is probably critical to gaining access to that insurance with more stringent processes now from insurance organizations. So this is something that you can provide that's built in after any test. And one of the really nice things that I like about it is that it gives you capabilities to understand what the recovery time objective is. If you've tested the solution, it will tell you, hey, this application, my critical CRM system, for example, took 5 minutes to recover to the cloud. Now you can set expectations across the business of how that's going to take place and the expected time to get that application back on running should a ransomware incident happen. It also details all the recovery steps. So this can be socialized across the business to make sure that the plan is correct. It factors in all of the different pieces that you need to consider. So this is built in as well. One of the pieces, just that recovery I mentioned, we generally have an SLA of 1 minute per virtual system. we can understand exactly how long that's going to take, but also you can fail over the system from any device. So we built our cloud console to be API addressable. It's also a web UI that you can access through an iPhone, iPad, Android device, for example. And this allows you to use that same platform to selectively choose the applications you want to fail over, change the checkpoint, pick the point in time that you're going to recover the application back to, whether that's the latest point or historical point in time, submit that, and those applications will start bringing themselves up in the iland platform, again, on a global basis. So this is really, really important to make sure that we have a successful recovery. So that's a little bit about the platform and how we recover data and applications in the cloud. Once you're there, I think it's really important to evaluate what that cloud services provider is doing from a security and a data protection perspective. So maybe you're evaluating iland, maybe you're evaluating another provider. What do they provide as a baseline from a security perspective? Because if we think about ransomware, it's important, if we fail over successfully from one place to there, to make sure that we're not then re-attacked or impacted by a security threat when we're running in the cloud. So our approach is to build in a lot of security technologies into our core platform, from things like antivirus and anti-malware, integrity scanning, log inspection, encryption at rest. All of these things lay on the platform itself. So once you successfully fail over an application into our platform, these technologies inherently kick in, and you have a view into the security of those applications as they're running in our platform. And we can ensure that we have protection in place to make sure that, again, we're not impacted by a ransomware attack as we're running in our cloud environment. So this is our approach there. But again, evaluate what the security posture is of the provider that you're maybe looking at from a disaster recovery perspective. We also understand compliance is critical. So we have a dedicated compliance team at our organization, and we align to a lot of different frameworks. We understand that organizations need to do that to obviously do business and to remain in their specific sector. So hopefully we see a badge here that maybe you need as an organization, but if you are maybe concerned about compliance in the cloud, or you may be considering these solutions, we have people that you can speak to that can provide documentation and obviously meet some of the questions you may have questions on as well. So I think this is really, again, critical to evaluate, and I think it's a strength of cloud providers in general is their focus on compliance and documentation as well. The other piece to be kind of cognizant on is, what does the support experience look like? What is your responsibility once you're leveraging the cloud service? Am I responsible for failing over, doing testing, making sure that it's successfully working? One of our approaches, we have two approaches in fact, is to obviously spend a lot of time in the design phase in terms of validating and designing the solution, making sure that it's compatible, whether we're a right fit for the organization. We also help deploy the solution and onboard you as an organization, and then after the fact, we build in 24/7 support into our offering. What does the support experience look like with the provider that you may be evaluating for data protection and recovery? This is our approach, but again, their approaches differ. Sometimes there are additional costs and elements to consider there as well. So I think what we've seen a lot of, focus on is we have a lot of expertise in data protection. We've been doing data protection for over 10 years, in fact, and we have a lot of recognition from folks like Gartner and Zerto themselves. A lot of organizations are looking for someone with that expertise to take the whole solution in and allow them to focus on their application development, their revenue-generating activities. And so that's why we built a service called Autopilot that allows you to take a fully kind of hands-off approach. We provide full management support of the environment. We do testing, we do validation, we build runbooks, we provide all of the documentation and metrics. So if you are considering what your data protection plan looks like for a multi-cloud world, and you're looking at what's in place, we have these solutions that we can talk to you about as well. And again, this is just a two-step approach. You can, if you have the expertise in-house from a data protection perspective and a continuity perspective, we have those solutions where we can onboard you on our platform. But again, if you want that kind of managed service, that's where the Autopilot service comes in as well. And we mentioned, again, insurance a lot. We as an organization went recently through a process of obtaining cyber insurance. As an organization, we have a lot of important data, a lot of important customers. That's becoming more and more stringent process, really hard to obtain. And so again, documentation, validation, compliance is a big deal there. And that's why with things like our Autopilot service, we provide a lot of documentation as to what the plan looks like, how we're validating it, how we're making sure that it's a success as well. So I think this is, again, really critical to evaluate what you have in place from a recovery perspective as well. We cycle through that, just a lot of information to gain access to as well. So I've been speaking a lot. I think we'd love to have a conversation with you at our booth to talk about what your organization is doing for data protection, how you're recovering, how you're protecting your organization. We work with a lot of organizations. This one's an organization, Stena Drilling, based in Scotland. And one of the key pieces that they wanted from our solution was the expertise and the technical expertise to make sure that they could not only just take the technology, which they knew would work for their organization, but take that and apply it to their organization, make sure that the project was a success. So they worked really heavily with our pre-sales team, but also with our deployment team to make sure that it was tuned and fit for the purpose, and then worked with our support team to make sure that they would help during testing and validation of the solution as well. So it's really good for me to see successful projects. We have a range of case studies on our site. But with that, I'd love to see if there's any questions, but we do have one last slide as well, which is just the free trial, right? I've spoken a lot about how great iland is, but I'm within our sales and marketing team as well. What we really encourage organizations to do is to go to our website here, iland.com/free. This deploys an automatic test drive, which you can actually plug into your live environment. You can actually get hands-on with the technology, hands-on with the platform, and see if what I'm saying is true. You can also work with our support team to actually help you along that way as well. So this is something, if you are interested in what to do and how to modernize your data protection solutions, you can visit this URL and you can get all of our products. We make sure that customers can get hands-on with all of our products before they sign and leverage them as well. So we'd really encourage you to take the next step, see how they work for your organization as well. But with that, I'd love to open up, see if there's any questions in the audience. If there are not, we're at the booth as well. So I'm 5 minutes to go, I'm done. But if there's any questions. Oh, we got a mic.
Hello. Yeah, so what cloud providers do you, we are already with AWS, is that something you can support or is that not?
So from the disaster recovery as a service, it's squarely focused on VMware-based platforms today. We have backup solutions that work with things like Hyper-V and other elements. If you're in AWS, we can potentially provide things like object storage if you want to maybe leverage kind of multiple object store platforms for resiliency and data protection, but we don't currently offer a recovery strategy for AWS. Yep. Any other questions at all? If not, again, we're upstairs. We're at the, I think we're near the coffee, so come and see me, have a conversation. I really value everyone's time and coming to attend the session. With that, thank you very much. Cheers.